All right. So, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the class tonight. Another good Wednesday evening to study the Bible. So, we are in Psalm 123. If you have your Bibles, you can flip open there and see that. If not, you'll be able to see it on the screen. If you have a comment, you can put it on either the YouTube chat or the Facebook chat, and I can see it there. Or, again, if you know my phone number, the best thing to do is just text me a comment and I can get it that way. And I have a helper tonight, but
Hi.
hey babe, can you hand me my water? I forgot to get it. But I forgot to get my water, so I need to get her to hand me my water. So hey, just looking forward to going through Psalm 123. It's a really short psalm. It's only 4 verses, but we're going to take each one of these in an entirety. Sorry about that. I had to have a drink. And so if it's only 4 verses, it's only 4 verses, but it's 4 really good verses. So I think we can have a really good study through it. So let's read it first. If you've got a Bible, Psalm 123, I am reading from the New International Version. This is actually New International Version 1984 edition. I don't know that you can still even purchase a 1984 edition, but maybe you can. I don't know. I can find one used somewhere. So anyway, Psalm 123, a song of ascents. I lift up my eyes to you whose throne is in heaven. As the eyes of slaves look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a maid look to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till he shows us his mercy. Have mercy on us, O Lord, have mercy on us, for we have endured much contempt. We have endured much ridicule from the proud, much contempt from the arrogant. So we're just going to dive into that. And I titled this one, actually, Eyes on the Master, because that's really what it's about. It's about where our eyes are when we start the journey. And so let's kind of talk about where we are in the journey and where we are in the study. So we started in Psalm 120. These are called the Psalms of Ascent. So these we talked about in the first lesson, if you want to go back and review that. But I think songs that they would sing on their journey to Jerusalem for the 3 major feasts. So we started out in Psalm 120, and that's when the pilgrim, he's dissatisfied with his life. He's weary of living among the lying lips of Meshach and Kedar. He sets his face toward Jerusalem, and he's decided to leave to start this journey to go to the presence of God. In Psalm 121, he kind of steps on the road and he lifts his eyes to the hills. He's finding his help in God, who is going to help him with the journey. 122, last week, he talks about the joy of the destination. You know, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. And we spent the evening talking about just the presence of God and how great the presence of God is. And so when you start a journey, usually there is this moment when you start a journey where you're like real excited about the journey. I mean, the destination is still far off, but you're really excited about where you're going. You're excited about the vacation. If you want to think about it that way, you're excited about the journey. And then as you start on the journey, you know, you get maybe in the middle of it, and I mean, the road just keeps stretching on, and you know, maybe somebody laughs at you because you're going to make the trip at all, and so you find yourself in the middle of a journey. So I titled this next section maybe the middle of a dusty road. Not when you're thinking about like all the good things about the journey, but it's kind of like you've you've given this glad shout that you've started out on the journey, and now you've got this quieter, wearier voice, and it's just like you're right in the middle of the journey trying to figure out how to finish it. And I think about different things that different kind of journeys, maybe trips. And sometimes when you get ready to go, you're so excited that you can't hardly sleep. Like you're just excited about what the next day is going to offer. I think sometimes about people who talk about going to the beach. I mean, they like going to the beach so much that they just think, man, that's just the greatest thing ever, and I just can't wait to go to the beach, and I'm so excited. I thought about, and I had to call Diane this week and ask her to make sure I remembered this right, and I think I remember it right, but I wouldn't swear that I remember it right. We took a trip, a Mediterranean cruise. We had to fly. I think we flew out of Philadelphia, and we flew from Philadelphia to Venice. And I looked that up. It said it's like an 8.5 or 9 hour flight. And I remember I was excited about the trip. But when we got on the plane, and you've been on the plane for a while, I mean, I watched a couple of movies. I started listening to music, and thankfully they had, there was like a screen in the seat in front of you, and you could watch a movie or listen to music. They had little GPS map on there. You could watch and see how far you had gone, and how high the plane was traveling, how fast the plane was traveling, and where you were on the journey. And when you got in the middle of that journey, and I know some of you have taken longer plane trips than 8.5 or 9 hours. But in the middle of it, I'm thinking, man, I was really excited about going. But in the middle, I'm a little bit weary. You're looking for that. It's that middle of the dusty road when you're just trying to get. It's maybe the boring part of the trip. I don't know how to really explain it. I remember a time, and I went to Abilene to a lectureship, and I went with Todd Elliott from Muna, and he wanted to leave right when the evening lecture was over, and we were going to drive from Abilene straight back to Nashville, and we weren't going to stop. So we get in the car and we take off, and we haven't gone very far, and Todd goes to sleep. And that's a pretty long drive. And I remember, like, right in the middle of the night, I'm thinking, man, this is a really, really long drive. And it's just kind of like the middle of the trip. When Diane and I were dating, and she went back to Knoxville in the fall, I would drive from Hornbeak to Knoxville to go see her. And so I guess it's okay to say this. I'd stay as late as I could before I had to leave. So I would end up driving back to West Tennessee like 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. And I remember, like, it gets midnight and you're in the middle of that journey. That's the middle of a dusty road. Or we went kayaking on the Buffalo River in Arkansas one time. We went over there when Houston was living in Missouri, and we went over to do this kayaking trip. And we stopped at this place where everybody was stopping, and this guy told us, he said, there's a beautiful waterfall. It's about a half a mile. Oh, okay. Diane's over here listening. She said, okay. He said it was a tenth of a mile. Well, tenth of a mile was actually probably closer to a mile. And it was closer to how much, babe? Diane says it's closer to 2 miles. I don't know, but at least a mile and a half, she says. I just remember we start walking, and you don't want to quit walking because you think it's going to be right around the next corner. And you get around the next corner and there's no waterfalls. You get to the next corner, the next hill, and we've got on water shoes. It's hard to walk. We don't have on hiking shoes. It is a long way back there to that waterfall. We do have pictures from that. But I just think about a trip that you're trying to take, and it maybe the longest trip you've taken by foot or by car or plane. And in this psalm, he's not talking about the start, and he's not talking about the arrival. He's talking about the middle of the trip, when sometimes you question why you are even taking the trip. And so when he does that, he says, I lift my eyes to you whose throne is in heaven. If you remember back in Psalm 121, he wrote, I lift my eyes to the hills. But in 123, the gaze is a little higher than that. He's looking past the hills. He's looking to the Maker. And the further the pilgrim goes on the journey, the higher his eyes learn to look. And in this phrase, there are a couple of things that are key. That the first two words of the psalm, after a psalm of ascent, which is really just a title, the first two words in the actual text of the psalm is to you, like to you. So the emphasis in the psalm is who the psalmist is looking to get the encouragement, to get the endurance to make the trip. And so he's looking to God and the one who lives in the heavens. Now, that might remind you of a New Testament phrase where God urges us as aliens and strangers in the world. So we live as aliens and strangers. I mean, we're on a journey. And it seems while we're on the journey, and we'll get to this in just a second in the psalm. He talks about those who mock us or who have contempt for us because we're on this journey of journeying into the presence of God. That as we go through that journey, there's all of these maybe a word for it is powers. There's all of these powers that loom over a pilgrim on earth. I mean, you think about our world, there are empires or nations. They're, and maybe they make laws or maybe they take a position that seems opposite of the position that we're trying to take. Or maybe there's an official that has been elected or someone in the government. And again, we honor those who are in the government. We pray for those who are in the government. Maybe it's just someone in the world who mocks us or doesn't understand our journey or doesn't understand what the journey is about. Or maybe they don't even have belief in our journey. And here the psalmist is, the point that he is getting at is in all of those things that can oppose us, of the ridicule and what we have to endure and the contempt, remember to look past that, to look at the one who is sitting on the throne in heaven. I mean, you think back to maybe Nehemiah when they're getting ready to rebuild the temple. And it says in the text that they jeered at us and they despised us. And sometimes as we look above and remember where the throne is, sometimes what seems to be in control isn't really what is in control. I was talking to someone today and he's facing some end of life issues and he has a totally different perspective on things, and I remember his statement. He said, 2 months ago, I would have fought you for them. And now the money that I'm getting for them is just like getting a paper towel. It's like what was once important isn't as important. And that's the way we're all supposed to live. We're supposed to live where we keep our eyes on eternal things and the one who's living in the heavens so that we remember the things that are really important. So he starts this psalm in the singular. I lift up my eyes, and I lift my eyes to you. So it starts out as a personal discipline. It's a deliberate act. Weariness and shame and opposition that pulls the gaze down to the road, but faith pulls our sight up to the throne. So he says, our eyes look to the Lord our God until he has mercy on us. So he changes from first person to first person singular to first person plural, and as they walk that road, I think a part of the importance of that is we don't walk the road alone. We walk the road in a community. And so he has this picture. Let's go back to the text. As the eyes of a slave look to the hand of their master as the eyes of a maid look to the hand of her mistress. So the idea here is that a slave, someone who is serving someone else, is just simply looking at their hand. And in an ancient household, the hand of the master is, if you were a servant, that's where everything came from, like provision. Like the hand distributed the food and the wages, and the hand distributed of the master distributed whatever each servant needed for the day. So in the analogy, God is the master, we're the servants. It gave directions. You know, a lot of times in ancient society, even in our society, sometimes often you signal instructions with just a gesture, just a movement of the hand. So a really good servant would know his master well enough that just the smallest gesture of the hand, that they would catch that, and they would know the thing that their master wanted them to do. I don't know. I was trying to think about this, if I had any particular gestures like that, or even Diane did, that like the movement of a hand meant something, and I couldn't really come up with one. She might give me one from over there in the corner. I don't know. But I couldn't come up with one in our relationship. But you might have one, you know, that just like a certain movement of the hand means something. And if they weren't in that relationship, they wouldn't know what that simple gesture meant. You know, a slave in ancient society didn't have very many rights. There wasn't really a way for him to defend himself, but, you know, a servant who's wronged by outsiders, you know, he would look to the master's hand for protection, so that would protect him. And even correction, even discipline comes from the same hand. You know, the servant just didn't stop watching the hand, because it was provision and direction and protection and correction. A lot of ION words all put together there. But, you know, and the way the psalmist writes it, if you jump back to the text really quick, he talks about a male slave, and then he talks about a female slave, which we've translated their maid. And so every pilgrim in the company, man and woman, keeps this same watch. And we keep watching until his eyes show us mercy. And so it's not like it's a glance. It's like a sustained, patient gaze that it refuses to look away until the answer comes. You know, it's not the servant doesn't set the timetable. The servant he watches and waits, and he patiently observes the master as the master acts. And, you know, I think maybe a question that should come from that is, as we patiently wait on our master, what is it that we watch? Where are our eyes? Like are our eyes? It's very hard for me to say. Are our eyes on the master, on God, or are they on the problem or the circumstance or something else? The psalmist says, I look beyond all of that. I look beyond those who oppose me, and he's looking beyond the circumstances, and he's looking upward to the one whose throne is in heaven, because that is the one who is in charge of the journey. That is the one that's going to give him strength. And so then he just repeats, if you look at the text, he says, have mercy on us, O Lord, have mercy on us. I mean, he repeats that for a particular reason. That's kind of the language of someone maybe at the end of endurance. Like, have you ever been in a spot where you just really felt like maybe just giving up? And that's where the psalmist is here. And so he says, we have endured much contempt. And the language there is we're full of it. We're full of contempt. And he doesn't mean contempt that he has for someone else. That's not the contempt that he's full of. It's more than enough. It's filled up to the brim, but it's the contempt that's being given to them. We see that in the next verse, in verse 4. So they've swallowed, they've heard all of the ridicule that they can possibly hear. I mean, they're at the end of their rope. And there's not anything else they can hear. Have you ever been maybe in a spot that you have just heard all that you want to hear? You don't hear anything else. You don't want one more criticism. You don't want one more person to tell you what you're doing wrong. You don't want another person to tell you why you have the wrong perspective. You don't want any more negative comment. That's where the psalmist is. He said, I am absolutely filled to the brim with that, and I don't want any more. I mean, I've had all I can take. And so he tells you where the contempt is coming from. He says in verse 3, have mercy on us, O Lord, have mercy on us, for we have endured much contempt. We have endured much ridicule from the proud, much contempt from the arrogant. So those who are at ease. And so think of it this way: this pilgrim is on this journey to Jerusalem, and he's in the middle of the dusty road, and along the road there are all of these people who don't understand his trip. They do not understand why he's making this journey. They don't understand why he's trying to go to Jerusalem to find the presence of God. So as he's marching, these people who are confident in themselves, they're at ease in the world, they consider themselves the proud of the world, and they've made themselves a home in the world, and they don't understand the pilgrimage. You know, it just looks absurd to them what these pilgrims are trying to do. And for us in the psalm, that's us. We're the pilgrims, and the world, I mean, they don't understand the journey. They don't understand where our perspective is. They are the ones who are at ease, and the ones who are proud. The text calls them the arrogant. Another word for that would be the self-confident, those who think they have everything figured out. And then they see these people who are on this journey, us, who are on this spiritual journey through Christ as we journey toward the presence of God, and they don't have any understanding of what we're trying to do. So the only thing they know to do is to ridicule us, to show us contempt, to show us disrespect. And the interesting thing about this particular psalm is this psalm doesn't ask God to remove them. He asks for mercy to endure them. So his weapon against the contempt is not retaliation. It's looking upward to God who sits in the heavens, whose throne is in the heavens. And so the psalm, it's pretty obvious the scorn hurts and the contempt hurts and the ridicule hurts. So it's not pretending that the road that doesn't wound us, it's deciding where we look while it does. And so as we go through that journey, you know, one of the things that we can't do is most of the time, and I want to say at least 2/3 of the time, okay, we can't really change circumstances. There are some circumstances I can control, and the circumstances I can control are the decisions that I make. There are other circumstances I can't control. They're either circumstances that the decisions of other people create, or they're just circumstances based on the way that the world works. So he can't, as this pilgrim is journeying toward Jerusalem, and he's getting this contempt and ridicule, he can't really change the person who is creating the contempt and the ridicule. He can't really make the road not dusty. The only thing he has the ability to do is change his gaze to control what he's looking at. You know, we kind of get the same type of command in the New Testament in Hebrews 12, run with endurance the race marked before us, looking to Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. So you can't change the race itself. What you do is you put your eyes on where you're going. You look to the throne in heaven, to the one who dwells in heaven, or in Hebrews, you look to Jesus, who's the author of the protector of our faith. Or Paul says you don't look at things that are seen, you look at things that are unseen. So one of the great things about Psalm 123 is one of the things that helps us as pilgrims in the world, because that's the way we're presented in the New Testament, is where our eyes are looking. Are our eyes looking like on the things of the earth, or are we looking above to the one who lives, who dwells in heaven? So kind of a couple of practical things as we close this out. One is you have to trust the master's hand. You have to trust the one who's in control of the journey. You know, that word teal is kind of a small word in the text. Have mercy on us, O Lord. We have endured much contempt. Or in verse 3, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till he shows us mercy. And till is a really small word, and it means until God does what God is going to do. But we often, instead of waiting until God intervenes and does what he is going to do, we're looking at our phones, we're checking our plans, our ability to solve our own problems, our ability to control the narrative of life. You know, maybe we're looking at backup options. The servant in this psalm simply just looks at the hand of the master. Everything good comes from the master's hand. You know, that verse in Lamentations, the Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. So our provision, direction, protection, correction, all of those come from the master's hand. So we trust that. I think maybe another lesson from this psalm is we should expect contempt. I mean, don't be shocked when it comes. You know, before you walk into a conversation where your faith or your convictions or your obedience to God will be visible, whether that's at school or at work or in a family chat or, I don't know, a group chat or Facebook post, remind yourself that contempt, scorn, ridicule are possible, and not only are they possible, they're probably even likely. You know, so don't be surprised at it. I think maybe sometimes surprise makes it sting more than it really should. And if we're not careful, that can knock us into kind of to a silence or a shame. You just expect that that's what's going to happen. So you keep your eyes lifted to the one who is dwelling in heaven instead of scanning everybody else for approval. You know, but like before a hard conversation or a hard decision or a hard situation in life, you just pause and ask yourself, whose eyes am I really looking at right now? Am I looking to God, or am I looking to other people? And it's probably something we ought to practice more in a daily thing instead of just at a crisis moment. And we don't let that contempt dictate our response. Like when you sense scorn, you know, it's an eye roll, a dismissive comment, you know, a cold shoulder, maybe because of a stand you took, or somebody not giving you a like or on a Facebook post, or maybe they stop interacting with you for a while or maybe forever. You know, sometimes the urge for us is to lash back or to either shrink back. And the psalmist is praying. His response to contempt is mercy. It's not a comeback. It's I guess what I'm trying to say is just kind of practice pausing and praying instead of reacting if we can. And then, you know, be honest with it. If you receive contempt, just name it honestly and don't pretend that it doesn't hurt. You know, he's not the psalmist isn't stoic in the way he approaches this. I mean, he says it plainly twice. You know, it's like it's contempt, and we endured it, and it's ridicule, and we don't want it anymore. So honestly, just say, you know, sometimes people say things to us that hurt, and I think maybe the way we overcome some of that is we build a community that expects it with us, and that's why God has us in the church. You know, find people that aren't baffled when you tell them you faced scorn for a conviction that you had, or people who will pray with you rather than than act like something's wrong. Um, you know, isolation makes it feel like proof that you're doing something wrong, but community reframes it as it's expected and it's even shared. And so when he says, have mercy, that's what provides our endurance. Like if there's something that sustains us and gives us, maybe you think about food for the journey, right? Usually when we take a road trip, we have to stop somewhere to get a snack. Think about this like a spiritual snack instead of a physical snack. You know, we're not stopping at Buc-ee's to get brisket, but he doesn't ask for the road to be silent, to be shortened, and he doesn't ask for the mockers to be silenced. Twice he just says, show us mercy. That's what gets us through the stretch of the road. The mercy is what produces and provides our endurance. I mean, if we're going to make it from point A to point B in our spiritual journey, point A being our conversion, point B being the moment that we are united with Jesus, then the only way to have the endurance for that journey is to keep our eyes focused on the one who dwells in the heavens. So kind of a couple of quick reflections. These are just kind of food for thought. Write these down. Maybe if you don't want to write them down, send me a message and I'll send them to you some way. Number one, what most often pulls your eyes down to the road instead of up to the throne? Instead of looking at where God dwells and keeping your eyes on him, what most often pulls your eyes down to the road? I mean, is it criticism or circumstances or trying to fit in or trying to look like the world, trying to live like the world, trying to hang on to the things that the world hangs on? What most often makes it feel like a middle of a dusty road and keeps your eyes from being focused on the end result? Here's a second question. What would you change this week if you watched God's hand instead of watching your problem? Like if you could get your eyes off of whatever your problem is and your eyes focused on the hand of God, where the provision and help and comfort and protection comes from, what would be different with that? How could you approach something differently right now that's in the middle of that journey? Because that's you on the journey. You're not journeying from where you live to Jerusalem. You are journeying in your life from your conversion to Jesus to being in Christ's presence. And although you're already in his presence and the Holy Spirit already empowers you, the right now is not exactly what the then is going to be. So we're on that journey. So as you're on that journey, what could you change in your journey this week that could help you focus on who God is? And the third one is just kind of, have you ever felt the scorn of what the psalmist says, though are at ease, those who are proud or think they have the world figured out, or they're arrogant or they're self-confident, whichever. I mean, you can translate those words with a lot of different words, but how did you react to that? How did you answer it? And maybe what we need to do with that is just think about ways in the future that we can answer that. We can answer that better. So that was Psalm 123, a lot on just 4 verses, right? But we started on this slide 120. We've got this holy dissatisfaction about where we are, so we start this journey toward the presence of God. 121, we're looking for help for the journey. So, the question at the beginning of that psalm is, where will I find help? 122, we're looking forward to the joy of arrival, that our feet are in Jerusalem. We're in the presence of God and how great that's going to be. 123 gets us back kind of to the middle of the journey. Yeah, it's going to be great when we get there, but right now we're on a dusty road and we're in the middle of the journey, and we need to learn to lift our eyes up to the Lord and focus on him. And 124, we'll do that next week, is about God preserving us and God keeping us safe. So read 124 for next week. We got a couple of songs that come from 124. Starts, if the Lord had not been on our side, right? Let Israel say, if the Lord had not been on our side, what would have happened? What would happen if God wasn't on your side? And that's what 124 will be about next week. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the class tonight. Hope you have a great evening. and I will speak with you next week.